I'm Jason, and I'm from a company called Enlocus. We essentially focus on designing and making and building spaces for young people, and we have done for probably 13 years now. I particularly have spent my last 13 years as a professional landscape architect thinking about these spaces for young people. The interesting thing about the presentation today, or me being here today, is in all that time, although I think I'm quite generous with my professional time in terms of helping communities, I have never, I think in memory, volunteered my time to help a community. I've been fortunate enough to be a professional all that time, and I don't know why I haven't, it's just never really occurred to me. So I'm here not in a professional capacity at all. I'm here because I want to be here, and I'm here because I've met somebody digitally, or communicated with somebody I've never actually met but now I've met, who struck a chord with me, and I thought I could help in terms of unravelling the mystery anyway. When I present, I usually focus on our skills, which are design skills. We design and build quite amazing spaces. But I'm going to try and test my knowledge and my ability to communicate by focusing on a whole lot of things that are not really about a built or designed space. It's more about what do these things do for people. My team, the people I work with, we work all over Australia, and we're flying several times a week to lots and lots of communities, remote communities, regional communities, and we also have some major projects in really central metropolitan areas, Scarborough Foreshore in Western Australia, Brunswick in Melbourne, and we involve ourselves in a whole lot of things that are not about drawing pictures or about just designing a skate park. We spend a lot of time actually just trying to get the conversation going, which is exactly why I think I'm here today, to help kick that conversation on a little bit. We deal with, I shouldn't say deal with, that sounds a bit mechanical. We spend a lot of time with very, very little kids, in classrooms, climbing all over me, and I'm trying to communicate skate parks and things, but we also deal with some very serious adults in the community, whether it be elder statesmen or skateboarders and others. So we deal with a whole range of age groups, and they all have different hopes and ambitions. Aside from designing a skate park, which is the kind of, I don't know, the more basic version of looking at it, we firmly believe, and the reason why I've been doing this for so long is I firmly believe that whatever we do in terms of delivering one of these things has a huge effect. And it's how we do it and how successfully we are doing it is what kind of effect we'll get from this. So this is a skate park in Exmouth, which is, does anyone know where Broome is? Sort of up that way, very far north Western Australia. And you know, it takes a lot of energy to explain to decision makers to go beyond the skate facility, which is primarily a sports function, and then expand it into something that's much, much more than that. And that costs a little bit of money, but it just takes a lot more effort, really. The reason why I love this project is the slide second from the left is the opening of the skate park. It's primarily a sort of blue light disco in the actual skate park run by the PCYC. But basically on the left is a guy riding a BMX bike. That's pretty straightforward. So obviously, well not obviously, but I would like to say that when I talk about skate, I'm not just saying skateboarders, I'm saying bike riders, scooters, people who stand on their hands, whatever you want to do there. And it's a photo through some very robust but bespoke furniture. That's all it is. It's a seat, but it's a particular kind of seat. Then there's the blue light disco with the bubble machine in the next image. Then there's a really commanding structure over the top which is lit at night time. Over the right is a DJ, a temporary kind of DJ setup that's on the platform of the skate park. It's nothing more than a plastic trestle table and some portable mixing equipment. What I'm going to reveal, I guess, through this these couple of images is that there are a whole lot of layers that can go on top of this thing. If all the stuff comes together well, location, how it's designed, how we communicate now and through the process, who's involved, who do we hold up as our champions, who are our mentors, who is going to be using this place, and what are they going to be doing there. So it's not about designing a skate park, it's about everything else. What I'd like to say is that there's a lot of stuff I'm going to be showing now that are the layers, but trust me, ultimately the way this functions safely and from a sports perspective is really, really important, and we do very, very serious skate parks as well as what I'm showing tonight. I'm just focusing particularly on what it means to the community and why. This process is absolutely critical. Like, I know that this is going to go through a due process in terms of designing and delivering a facility. That's taken for granted. I think what should also continue to happen is this. Small conversations, big conversations, you know, people saying, what about this? Is it possible to do that? Yes, it's possible to do anything, small and large. This is in Port Hedland, even further north in Western Australia. The event that went before the youth space was quite remarkable in terms of how they got people together to talk about what they were going to deliver, and I'll show you that project in a second. An example, the bottom right hand corner, that image is of a kind of projection screen, and I'm in your way. I just want you to think that anything we do, and I might show you some very big examples, can be very little examples as well and still get the same effect. So that is two screens. There's the truck was used for a stage and for dancing and bands, but you can do this on very, very little, small, micro levels. And that always adds value to what we're going to probably call is a skate and community space. This is Perry Lakes in Western Australia, the third one for Western Australia tonight. The reason I want to show you this image is because we just finished it 2 weeks ago, and I met a young guy there, Maxwell Ryder, who's probably only 8 or 9, and he's an amazing skateboarder. I've never seen a young kid wear so many incongruent shoes and clothes and colours and badges and stickers and whatever. An amazing little kid. I'll show you a photo. But in the middle of that image is Maxwell's mum, who's not a typical mum. She's got no kind of fear of sort of action sports or whatever, but very, very bright woman. But around her are a whole lot of other kids. None of them she's ever met before, but they seem to congregate with her because she was the mother of Maxwell, the very competent skateboarder. And you could probably notice that she's sitting right in the middle of this space. Some of the things, it's elevated, it's looking over the space. I think what I'm saying is that any decisions we make should fundamentally be based on who really is going to be there, who's going to use this space and why are they going to be there. I think just to think about it as a place where young people can go or young people can skateboard or ride is only the beginning. I think what's really important is to think about how we can get everybody else there. And what decisions we have to make, they might be hard decisions, but genuine decisions where you close your eyes and go, now I really do believe that somebody who doesn't skateboard, who doesn't have children who skateboards, will actually go there, and why. That's a model. That image is kind of like an ideology, I guess. That's success to me. That's Maxwell Ryder, by the way. Like with any industry, and I guess any industry that you are involved with, there's always these words that are thrown around. It's like, well, inclusion is one that is thrown around in our industry. We must make this inclusive. What does that mean? The other one is we've got to make it multi-use. It's a multi-use. It's a flat bit of concrete and it has some line work on it, and it's a multi-use space. It's a youth space. No, it's not. It's a flat bit of concrete with some lines on it. So the word inclusive, once you start this process, you know, people, especially the professionals, and I'm one of them, but I won't be doing this to you, will be trying to explain their take on it all, and the words they might be using is, it's got to be an inclusive space. What does that mean? For everyone. And that means everyone. That means any age, obviously, but whether you skateboard or not. ideally it would be a place that invites somebody who their whole life has been kind of a bit unsure about skateboarding, young people, what they do, Ideal, that's ideal. If somebody can just walk past this space and then have an experience, hopefully a positive experience, and more often than not it will be, that's what it's for. That's the whole point of this, is that, as well as rolling around on a skateboard and navigating risk and making friends. This image is of a skate trail in Tweed, South Tweed, which is not that far from here. What's it look like? Doesn't look like a skate park. It's got some pretty folded yellow things in the background. So the other one people throw out in this conversation is a skate sculpture. And I deliberately put a bit of a twang on that because I don't think it's necessarily about what it looks like. I don't think it has to be bright colours or multicolours to make it a youth space. The whole point of that project, which has been borrowed and whatever, and misrepresented, I guess, the whole point of that project was I went to a meeting in Wanneroo probably 8 years ago, and when I left the meeting, out in the front of the community hall were these two pillars, these brick pillars. And somebody, male or female, it doesn't matter, they're all young. One was sitting on the pillar, quite high, dangling legs, like unconventionally high. There was a street light, because it was evening. There was a guy just on a bike, just sitting there chatting to the elevated person, and then there was another guy just doing some very simple skateboard tricks. But it was like they were just hovering in that one moment. So what I tried to do with the Tweed skate trail was each of those yellow elements, there's about 5 of them, I thought to myself, what are the different ways you can do that all in one? What are the different ways you can sit unconventionally, you can lie, you can hover, skate? So creating these little experiments really in moments. It's sort of like another model of how this might be a very small thing, but it might do a lot more than we've maybe been thinking about in terms of skate function only. It should be a destination. It should be somewhere that people go and sit and muck around and you know, build their skills, their social skills. And there's a whole lot of things that go along with that. That's like confidence and flirtation and gesture and language. And so it should be much more than just a skate park, or can be, depending on what you want to do with it. Not prescribing how is really important to young people, and you probably all know it better than I do. But you need reminding, adults need reminding. Not saying because it makes us feel good, we're going to put young people there and we're going to align those young people with services and they're going to have their space and they're going to feel great. What you really need to do is do something that allows the young people to come to you. So create a space that potentially is not necessarily prescribed for a purpose or any other reason. The whole trick with adolescents essentially is to sort of give them a hint and let them decide how they're going to participate. So when it comes to services and programs and other, the worst thing you can do is go, you must go and sit this class. That's where the health and youth services are. You must go through that door to get that information. The best thing to do is go, there's this really funky, crazy space we've just done. You guys can hang out there or not. And when you do, they encounter the people who can then lead them to those things. So it doesn't have to be adjacent to the services. It's just got to be kind of a tantalising central point that then leads to these other things. I have read lots and lots and lots about this, and obviously I spend my whole working life thinking about it, but there's some very key things or fundamentals that I'm trying to champion. It doesn't mean that all the other versions of this are not credible. It's just this is what I think motivates me. So that slide, which you hopefully might have read by now, is like just saying we don't have to provide services and youth buildings and community buildings and whatever. They're great. But what's important is that lots of young people learn what they need to learn in the streets, whether you like it or not. I don't know if you guys are any different. It's, you know, the old promenading is a Victorian thing where you walk down the promenade and, you know, the more radical few probably wore fur coats and walked alligators and things like that. But the public space is where it's at. It's the thing that never gets really talked about. It's the problem child. We've got schools sort of sorted out. We've got family and other things. I'm not saying that we've forgotten this age group, like some people say. I just think we're losing an opportunity by not thinking kind of into the future about what public space actually does for young people. In South Headland, the fifth one in Western Australia for this talk, I didn't mean to do this, I'm sorry, but why it's important is not because it's the biggest skate park in Australia, and it only opened last year, if not the start of this year. It's very new. It's a model for how we do these things big and small. But I didn't bring the aerial photo, but to the very right corner of that image, where that T intersection is the brand new city square. So there's an amphitheatre and it's all gridded and it has beautiful seats and it's all very beautiful. So this is basically an extension from the city square. That's how they're thinking about how to make sure that their young people are connected in some sort of way. Now, you can't just do that. There's a whole lot of responsibility that comes along with doing something like that, and that has to do with designing the space and how it really functions. And it's not about pretty colours either. It's about good quality stuff, something that has weight, something that has value, because no one will want to look at it otherwise. But I don't know if you can tell from that image because I put all the white text over the top of it, but the pedestrian throughfare is actually through the zigzag bit through the middle. And it goes up to a very high point that looks over the whole place, and then it comes back down again. So critical to understand that it's not just designing the skate elements, it's about how people might be accidentally involved, but safely involved. That's very important. To actually, as I said before, divert off your path and then be all of a sudden in amongst it, but not feel threatened in any way. Not that I'm saying that youth culture is threatening, but, you know, a stray skateboard to some people might be. And especially if you're getting some decent air on a bike. I'd say 99% of the time the person who hurts himself is the person coming off that device and not anybody else. But this is in Nambour. Is there anything kind of strange about the image? It's not really coming up very well. This really eccentric local donated these massive steel cogs from the sugar mill. And that doesn't even do it justice. They're massive. People will actually get up on them and just hang out there like it's a tree. Again, I'm in the way. But there's a whole lot of things that come together in that image, which I'll show you just one or two slides later so you understand it. But there's an informal events kind of thing happening on the side. There's prospect. Prospect just means elevation, and refuge, which means a place where you can safely sit and look over the world. It's sort of innate in how we behave. And then it's got this really iconic thing. The iconic thing is not only relevant to the place, but it's relevant to the young people. And it's not because it tells a particular story. Sometimes it's relevant because it's just commanding, you know what I mean? This thing is huge, it's rusty, it's chunky, it's industrial. That sort of language sometimes connects with young people. But I'm not going to say universally, I'm just saying we just don't have to put the faces of the community on a youth space. You can do other things. Does anyone know what skate coping looks like? So in the foreground, that big steel bit in the front, which I've cut off, is actually the critical part of some skate elements. So that's a skate park in the foreground. In the background, or on the northern edge of this park, is an RSL memorial. And then there's the RSL itself looking over the whole space, and then there's a pub looking over the whole space. There's a playground. So it's a central part of Nambour, and it was a deliberate commitment to design it well and put it in there, but put a few other things in there as well. So it expanded the sort of the buy-in from everybody else. RSL people or communities don't necessarily, you wouldn't normally associate them with a youth space or a skate park. I like saying Returned Services League because I think it triggers a lot more. Just, I don't know, I'm probably, you know, crossing a whole lot of lines by making my point. But RSL sort of, to a young generation, probably sort of skips a whole lot of stuff. Point is, they are a community in themselves. and they're the people we need to help take care of young people in public space. So that's why it's such a good example. But you might notice in the distance of this park, so on the ground there's all these motifs, but also there's quite unusual pieces. These are steel structures that were designed for the purpose. They're not skate park objects, they're actually designed specifically for Nambour. That takes a little bit of the money away, but it means so much. Just have it as a background image when you're taking footage or taking photos of a skater or yourself or whatever. But it's just the message it gives out, you know. Okay, I think there's a big opportunity to think about the other layers, and I've said that before. One of them is sort of dumbly think about it as a projector, a digital projector. Audio projection is really quite important when you're trying to get a space cranking. This is a LED screen in Armidale, $1 million use space in Western Australia. This is really bad. Okay, so the beautiful thing about that space is it sits right behind the two young guys. Right up the hill here is the council offices. The council offices have all mirrored windows, one way, looking right down on this space, which is kind of a bit awkward. But it does actually say that the council wanted it there, and it sends that message out to everybody. It's actually quite a comfortable place to be because you've got all these sugar guns and things. The way this interfaces with the rest of the world is really important, and that's why it's important to think about where it's going. Not necessarily the site, but wherever it ends up. I think, I say urban, but I don't want to say urban because I don't want to put country people's perspectives out of joint. I grew up in the Dandenongs in the hills, Sherbrooke Forest, green, an hour's drive out of Melbourne. So I know what it's like to be in beautiful environments. But I also think you can have both. You can have a little urban experience in these sort of places that really, especially when you're sort of 15, 16, 17, I think it's really important. So it's a particularly urban kind of edge, but I could even see an edge like that happening maybe around the skate park or community space. I think where kids go directly after school is really important. Probably not a consideration here, but like where kids catch the bus from is a very, very social fulcrum for a whole lot of life experiences. Nighttime, really important. Some simple tricks that we use. Don't just think about lighting it up like a big footy oval. Think about the mood that it sets. Mood sets. It's all right to locate big facilities with all the gear in places that are basically greenfield sites, because they're big enough to sort of carry themselves and hold themselves. Unfortunately, we're not talking about Coffs Harbour. But everything you see there, we should be able to make happen here, especially with the digital tech skill in the community and the music skill, mixing. That's a pretty decent setup you've got in the corner there as well. I've taken a photo of it. Thinking low level and bright blue colours in a sort of... What do you notice about that image? Or do I have another one? What do you notice about that image? There's no one in it. It's been well planned. It's blue. We designed it, so I shouldn't be so critical of it. But we've got to be very careful. We've got to be very clear about what creates a space that people will actually spend lots and lots of time in. Warburton, in the Dandenongs, in Victoria, Western Australia. Up in the hills, lobbied by a young group of kids, probably 15, 16. Very, 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 very small park. The sweetest place to go. Perched on a hill, right near the information centre in town. I'd call it country, but all of those guys basically made this happen. And that wasn't just lobbying. They're playing the band, they raise the money, they go and hang out there, they skate, they share, they mentor, and you'll probably notice the diversity of gender there as well. Elevated spot, people who don't skate can hang out and still be a part of it. I mean, a greenfield site is bad. I'm just saying it's got to have an energy. It's got to be where people naturally go or want to go. And this is Peterborough in South Australia, because I'm trying to tick off all states. And it would be mad of me to try and name how many states. Peterborough, interestingly, Peterborough is like 4 hours north of Adelaide, so it's the middle of nowhere. It's right near Flinders Ranges. All the stuff around the outside was physically done by council. The CEO laid the turf. There's no CEOs in here. There's laying down the mantle. But everything was run by the community. We literally, which is not what we're normally asked to do, we literally built it and left. All the rest was done by them. And they wanted to do it. They sent me a CD with like thousands and thousands of progress photos of the construction, not realising that I've spent 15 years looking at this stuff. It was just so sweet. They've captured every single second of this progress. Again, it's probably not clear enough, but the guy in the middle, he set up just a simple trestle table, and he was just had a couple of appropriate tools, and he was not just repairing their skateboards, he was showing them how. And it was just, that's when I first got to the site, that was happening. And he looks kind of gnarly, but then I realised his role was really quite important. They're his two twin daughters who have no fear. And that's the older daughter. Those two, no fear. They just run around, throw themselves down, roll around, it's great. Allen Park is on Sydney Harbour, on a bit of land that has been so valuable that they've spent $1 million on the master plan alone. $1 million on the master plan. It's a decommissioned psychiatric hospital. Oh, right, the College of the Arts. The point being is that it's how it's done. Heritage is important, history, proximity, the presence of your town, all of this is really important. But it can be done, and it can be done really well. So you might see that very shortly. Geelong Foreshore, Corio Bay. The best example, the first example, right opposite, in front of Deakin University on the foreshore. There's not one transition in there, good or bad, for skaters and riders. But it was the most literal urban plaza-style skate park in 2009, so it's a little while off. But it demonstrated that we didn't just have to roll out grey concrete skate parks anymore. As I said, right opposite Deakin University, guess who was the biggest objector when it went through planning to VCAT? Deakin University. Territorial. So there's some land, we don't know what we're going to do with it, or we might want to do with it in the future, so we're going to try and not let it happen. They changed their tune after a while, especially when it looks at night, and again, it's not doing it justice, but when you're there at night, the mood is like you just want to sit there and you want to spend time. It's like, it feels safe, there's little or no vandalism, the structures do a whole lot of things, but they're just the presence of that place was just, everything was right, including the engagement process through the whole project. Anything skatable, Adelaide Airport? We could turn the lights on. We could do more. If we turn the lights on, I've got a little bit of time. I don't necessarily need to stand up and answer questions, but I'm happy to provoke conversations. Has anybody got something they want to say?
Who's funded most of those projects, in your experience, that you know of?
Almost entirely local government, 50-50 with state. Now, state, more often than not, is sport and recreation money. But it's a small amount of money. When you get to the bigger ones, other agendas come into it, like community development money. And in Western Australia, they have Lottery West, so that's where much more money comes into it. But Geelong was three-way funded. Geelong City Council, the State Department of something, and a federal funding. I can't remember, it was a while ago, but I know that was three-way funded, that one. They thirds each, all public money. There are very few privately funded skate parks, but having said that, we did a little park up in Cobar. Does anyone know where Cobar is? How do you know where Cobar is? It's got a mine. And what's the mine called? Oh, there's several mines, but do you know Peak Gold? Yep. So Peak Gold chipped in. I wish I had a photo of that. Other than they like to get their corporate message across, what they did do was they wanted Peak Gold written on the skate park, and I said, we're not doing that. It could be called Peak, or it could be called KEAP, or we can funk it up, we can do whatever, but we're not branding this thing. I said, or you can give us your biggest derelict bucket and any other steel offcuts you've got, and we'll do something with it. They went one step further. There's like 3 Boilermakers, and they're burly, serious dudes with blades, and like, I tried to get them to make a comment on the experience. No way. But I got a photo of them. They got the arm of this bucket, which is massive chunks of steel, and they created these 2 seats. Now, they didn't just stick it on poles. They welded this sort of ornamental trunk and like tons and tons of steel and go, that's how you make a seat, which is making my... I'll send you a photo. But then they also got the bucket. They completely renovated it. They repainted it. They put it on props and they sat it right next to the skate pole so you can transfer onto it. But that's an awesome community effort. So Peak Gold chipped into that.
Probably a bad example here. Yeah.
Why?
Oh, yeah.
We can... Oh, really? Well, I think there's opportunity. I think the trick is to get multiple inputs if you're going to think about private investment. South Headland was BHP, Fortescue Metals, Lottery West, and... That's right. That's big money. But also, it costs a lot of money then.
How does our budget, where I'm curious how much is it, how does that compare? Like what skate parks do you see do all right or interesting with whatever money?
Can I, before that question's answered, I have absolutely no professional role or any responsibility to talk about some things like that. So if anybody else in the community wants to join in that conversation, go ahead.
The budget for Braidwood was is $200,000, and the park that we actually used in the grant application was actually just by coincidence was designed by Jason, the Warburton Park, I believe, and built by Precision, and that's for around the same budget, which is why we chose that one.
The one on the water wheel is probably less than that.
Yeah.
And in fact, that came through Precision before you and I'd actually met.
Yeah.
So, you know, that, yeah.
Plenty of non-corporate junk running around.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and artist-made stuff. But just as you arrived into town and had a look at the lay of the land, what was your general opinion of where we might put a skate park?
You can't get me shot or lynched. I think elevation, it's not new to you all. I think elevation's really important. So not just even elevation in the immediate, but elevation on top of a hill in terms of the civic kind of value of a place. I think prominent road frontage, busy, the busiest place you can possibly put it. Stretch it out. It doesn't have to be a big square that makes that impacts on that landscape or the urban space. It can be a linear thing. It can be a zigzag. It can be whatever you want. But I think centre of town, I'll put it out there, is what I've been lobbying for a very, very long time. I think the problem is we've always, without knowing, we've gone down the path of associating skate parks with sports recreation. But there's so much more behind it that is associated with culture.
We could use the swimming pool in winter.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
There's a split in the community because it is associated with a sporting area, which is low down, which floods with prolonged rain events.
Yes.
And which is surrounded by houses, which are a couple of metres from where this thing could be. So that the lovely layers you're talking about, with light and sound, would probably mean that many members of the community were sent to Cullen Park. I mean,
we're not talking strobe lights here.
I mean, it's in a residential...
Look, can I put another spin on that? I just think, and I don't want to speak out of turn, I think how we've got to think about this is, if you go to that effort, you want everyone to see it. You want everyone to see the goodness in it. So we could do all that stuff anywhere, but where you want it, if you're going to spend that kind of money, you want to do it well, and you want everyone who drives past to go, wow, because I've seen it. I've seen resistance, and then when it happens, people go, wow.
But when you live right across the road from it, which I do,
Yeah,
I mean, I would have to leave town.
that's right.
You know,
Well, I don't know that, but
no. What I mean is, one of the reasons for coming to Braidwood was peace and quiet. Okay, for me. I mean, I'm talking totally selfishly. But there are a lot of houses around that area. But I would love to be involved with this concept if it was in an area of town where it naturally fitted.
yeah.
So just to confirm, you live opposite the rec ground. Is that right? You live opposite the cricket net?
Yes, I live on the corner of Heather Street and Arrowloo and Lane, which is right there. And I mean, it just, and there are other people living around there. And your whole, because the sports that happen there now are wonderful because they're regulated, they come at specific times, there's always adults there, and the noise is contained for a certain time and nobody worries about it. But this sort of thing needs to be free and open and things
Accessible, yeah.
And it doesn't sort of fit with that location.
Totally, I think the houses there are really quite sweet and small and weatherboard. Some of them are really tiny little miners kind of cottages, and it's not like they've got the resilience to be able to cope with the noise and whatever. The other thing to think about is proximity in terms of the goodwill of some organisations and their access to young people doesn't have to be on the doorstep. In fact, for a young person to get that sort of help doesn't mean they want to walk through a doorway. But the really beautiful thing is when you, by extension, can make those things work together. So that means people who offer those services or are committed to that ideal, which is fantastic, they might spend some time where the young people are and then where they plan to be. The extension is a really good model to think about, but I can only go so far with this conversation. I didn't want to go too far.
You have some wonderful concepts and I think they'd be great in this town. It's just where, and that's for us to work out.
Absolutely.
So currently we're in a situation where we have a site that has been selected via and pointed at because of the grant application process. It's a narrow, easy path for council to take to build it in that location. It's the easy route. And it's being held up now as the most likely scenario. And it's mainly being put out that way because it's the easy way.
Yes.
And the other way is a little bit messy.
It is. It's a challenge. It will be a challenge.
How much more? All the things we've spoken about that can be gained. Is it worth the battle to have something built really well in the right place compared to built really well in the wrong place? It doesn't seem like much to some people who are outside the edges of the conversation.
Yes.
How do we relay that message?
Well, first of all, you've got to get councils buying. If the decision's been made, the decision's been made. Second of all, if you get community consensus, not majority rules, but a good chunk of the community have made their quick decision, I'll assure you that I know the 45 contractors who've got the skill to do this. It will not delay them in any way whatsoever. It's all about the consensus, about the agreement, bang. It's not going to make any difference in terms of time frame, constructability, that sort of thing. If that was a question. I mean, you can ask them that question. In fact, you should.
Is it better to not have a skate park than have one in the wrong place?
Exactly. That's the question.
Where's your nearest? Where's another skate park near here? Half an hour drive. Is it half an hour or 40? That's going to make the difference. There's no public transport. I just think I had a slide of image I was going to put up first, but I don't know why I didn't put it in. Of the first park I was ever involved with in Melton in Victoria, and just looking at it, a concrete skate park in a reserve. Part of it is if it's not in the right spot, then no one will particularly care, and then no one's going to bother maintaining it. Then potentially, even better if it is in the right spot, then the community might maintain it. So I don't actually think you should build a skate park in the wrong spot.
I think that's what people are imagining.
grey, those old style. I bet you that's what everyone's imagining, not imagining that it could be. Suit this town and its artistic, you know, sculptural.
But I would also say that there's a natural energy that would get everyone to rise to that challenge based on the fact that you're going to bother doing it in a valuable space.
Good for tourism.
Can we ask the people who are here tonight, who are obviously people who are passionate about it, maybe a show of hands, do we think, I mean I'm getting political, but do we think it is being put in the wrong spot? Like,
Yes.
yes. A show of hands. I'll take a photo. I'm going to go to the...
It's on video, Karuna.
I think the important thing is, yes, whoever's just said something there, that motivation to do something cool is different when it's in a less prominent space. If it's a more anonymous kind of space, irrespective of the logic. You know, we can say logically, but if it's not in a funky space, then it takes so much energy to put on public things like this.
Your whole spin on the connectivity with the community won't happen at the Red Room.
Nobody will go.
Connectivity with the community's got to happen to a sense.
It's
And
in tender.
is accepted, then you're in that situation that they can't back out. We can't do that.
No, hang on. I can answer that as a due process. It's gone to tender, but it's entirely up to council to decide whether they will entertain a site selection process, which is probably reliant on you requesting that they do. There's nothing. Not that I'm allowed to speak about the tender, but I don't think that there's anything that precludes that. So, once it's gone to tender, doesn't mean everything's
Decided yes or no at some point. But
maybe council can answer that question.
So it's Mike, but my name's Trevor Hicks. I play football. I don't ride skateboard. Sorry, but all this came about with the redevelopment of the oval with a contribution from the mine, which didn't happen many years ago. As a result, the state government stepped in with grant funding from clubs, and they filled the gap along with the Bendigo Bank. The precinct we wanted down there was for sporting facilities. It was short of cash. The Bendigo Bank kindly stepped in and says, we'll give you money for a skate park. And that's when Karuna started winding up, hang on, that might be the wrong spot. But by then, the state government grants, the Bendigo Bank grants, had all been started steamrolling towards there.
Yeah.
Well, that timeline's not completely true.
I don't think it's a done deal yet, but it's very hard to pull out with the
I understand it's hard, trust me. I understand that the democratic process is very difficult.
Is that how you'd see it, Paul?
The question has to be asked. Because I'm the culprit. Often I'm bound by funding constraints that says I have to deliver something by a certain time. The amount of times where I've introduced a bigger vision and it's delayed the progress and everyone's going to lose the funding, but they simply go and ask state government, are we really going to lose the funding? And state government go, well, based on that, no, we'll flex on this occasion. So I think it's just put this story to the people who are providing the funding and say, based on this new version, come on, tell us exactly. If you think we're going to lose it, if you're going to tell us we're going to lose the funding, fait accompli. But just think about it one more time.
One of the concerns I had, and we've got a skatepark in Bungendore, which is one of our highest areas of vandalism.
Yes.
Do you see that in the skateparks you build?
in the wrong spot.
Looking at that facility reminds me of the Diggers Rest one I was going to show you that I did 13 years ago. There's nothing wrong with it from skate fund. Well, there is, but it's just it's bound to fail in terms of what you were just talking about. There's nothing, because there's no value inherent in it that would sort of displace somebody from doing that or get other people to participate. It's just it's the 80s model. I honestly believe if you design it well, it maintains itself. Geelong doesn't have any vandalism on it.
And participation from other people sitting in, parents, other things happening there. I mean, I want you to really keen and go there.
Go where?
Well, go to this lovely, go to this lovely place that you've been talking about, where there's community input and everything. I want to be part of that, but I couldn't be where it's sited now. It's going to be a white elephant.
Yeah, thank you for even. It feels like we might have got a message across. I've got to leave in 2 minutes.
To the councillors is that we've only got a bit over a week for tenderers to put something in.
Yeah.
And then what's the decision process over that? How do we know that the tender's gone to the companies that we want it to go to? And how do we then participate in deciding who's going to get the tender?
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
Do you want the
We've
mic?
got a week.
We don't pick who the tender goes to. Tenders are done by putting out a specification, and companies who monitor specifications then apply. So they self-select. So the tender has gone out, and the tender document here, just so you know where we're up to, the tender document, which has been, I don't know how many people have taken it. I asked for it to be sent to me. You need to be registered with TenderLink, I think, to get this. It shows quite clearly the site, 300 square metres, I think it is, at the rec. So the people who are tendering have a very clear idea of where it's going to go. I just thought I'd better mention that, because at the moment, I think the only possibility that the council would entertain would be to not build it.
Maybe that's we'd prefer that. We'd have a chance to do it somewhere else.
200,000. So I think the best. Sorry.
Yeah, we'd rather not have the banks
Money spent is not a good investment.
Yeah.
And that's money that could go back to Clubs New South Wales and go to good projects.
Yeah.
And maybe that's...
I'd prefer it doesn't go down there.
Yeah.
Or can we bank the money like you had suggested before, Paul, and then raise more money?
Yeah.
We'll raise the money overnight, man. There's so much.
Find another site, whether it's Rowry Park or another site.
Doesn't have to be
but
there.
Make that money. The council Because I the site. Is there any difficulty getting that?
Okay, well in that case, everybody needs to make submissions to the council to say, we don't want a skate park at the rec, and we'd rather not have a skate park anywhere than to have it at the rec, because conflating it with the issue of putting it in another spot and picking a spot like Rowry Park is where it's going to fall over, because, as you know, the council has always been petitioned by as many people against Rowry Park as it has against the rec. So therefore, the best solution for the council would be just carry on.
There was never a choice. There was never a choice.
Can you tell me how you made the decision? I emailed each councillor individually, as well as the colouring council. I've had no response to date in this process. So how do we engage? I work full time and I commute as well. How can I engage in this process? Because to date, I've had no response from council.
I'm going to hand the mic over to you, and I'm going to pack up.
I'd just like to confirm the petition numbers. I've got the petition for anti-Rowry Park, and there was 62 signatures on that. And the average age of the people who signed that was over 60. We had 130 petition signatures against the rec ground, and then plus 40 from all the businesses in town. So that's 100 and what? Matt's 170 already. And then we got absolutely nowhere with council. Like, you guys have to admit the amount of letters that were pro Rowry Park, and maybe it shouldn't be Rowry Park, it should be a decision amongst everybody. But down here is not where we wanted it ever. And that was made clear from the beginning, and I don't know why we just didn't get traction. You know, I mean, I'm so glad that you three have turned up tonight. It's fantastic. Yeah. Thank you for coming, and like, you know, our voice needs to be heard, and we still, you know, maybe it's not too late, and tell us what we have to do to, you know, get the point across. Sorry. Yeah. And can we say thank you, Jason, and stuff?
No, it's on my here. Thank you. It's a beautiful town, and even driving in here, I think it is a beautiful town. You should work hard for it.
Sure, we can. If you want to. Well, I've got a petition saying as much. We can sign it now.
That we don't.
Yeah.
Mom, can I play tip?
No, we're going to go now, darling.
Thank you.
road park. That is right. They're both sort of road park. The other one's fine. Thanks for coming, guys.
No worries.
Really appreciate it. I don't know where we can go from here, but I mean...
Well, the other thing is if you can...
Hard position you guys are putting.
You've got a bit of a problem. A, you don't want it down the park, down there, and other people don't want it up there. If you can find somewhere that's suitable for everybody.
Yeah. Oh well, of course. But I guess the more pressing issue is the tender's gone out, and
As you say, if you get go that way.
yeah.
But that doesn't mean to say that you're going to get the
how would we
money.
encourage? That's fine. I think we can raise the money
It's
another
all right.
way.
As I said,
How could we encourage council then to say that we don't want it down there?
you'll have to come up with somewhere else.
That's all right.
That's the better option.
Well, like
As I
you
said to
said.
you before.